Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 623. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. We're also 1 week out from the Oscars, guys.
Yeah,
We are.
That's
it's gonna be fun.
I'm getting excited. I've been catching up on some more Oscar picks recently,
Yeah.
Okay.
or Oscar movies. So
What have you watched recently?
I watched
hadn't watched.
The Color Purple.
Okay. I haven't seen that one yet. Was it is it worth me watching it before the Oscars? Is that going to matter?
I don't think it's going to win any Oscars,
Right.
but I do think that Danielle Brooks, who is nominated for Best Supporting Actress, I believe, it's a worthy performance of that nomination. She's a lot of fun in that movie.
Is it a musical?
It is a musical. And if I had one complaint, I guess we're doing a mini review, it's that like The Color Purple is a rather heavy. Yeah, it's kind of dark, right? It's about a woman who's dealing with a lot of oppression and violence and, not living a great life that it could be. And then they break out into song. And it feels a little off-putting sometimes because, generally musicals tend to be on the happier or cheerier or brighter side. And this movie is maybe trying to highlight more of the happier sides of this woman's life. But tonally, there was some whiplash going on.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Well, I've wanted to check it out just because, man, I love The Color Purple. Couldn't wait for the song
You're a
version of
purple
it.
head for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. They, spoiler alert, they do end with Purple Rain as a big cast number.
I mean, it's based on the play, right? Like there was the book. They made the movie, but they made a play out of the book, and then they decided to adapt the play into the movie, right?
Yeah, this is based on a stage musical. So this is not like a remake of the Spielberg movie. This is a different path to adaptation.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be more excited to go see the play than I don't know.
You can be
I'm
excited
see
for
it live.
both. It's not a zero-sum thing. You can do both.
It is for me. It's one or the other, not both. How many times do I need to see this story told, Zach?
Need none.
That sounds like oppressor talk to me there, James.
This is for sure. I really haven't been watching. Man, lately I've been starting movies and not finishing them, which is not really what I do.
Do you feel like after 45 minutes or so, the movie's not grabbing you?
No, it's more like after 20 minutes or so, I get an email or something and I pause it for a second and then just obviously not motivated enough to go back to it.
Right.
Even though I kind of have a rule that I have to go back to it, but I got like 2 or 3 movies that are just hanging there.
It kind of sounds like you have an email rule. You weren't aware of this, but apparently your email rule is if I get an email during this movie and I don't go back to it, then obviously the movie wasn't worth my time.
No, it's more like I have a work-life separation issue, probably.
Oh. Yeah,
I need to just
didn't want to say
ignore
it out loud,
emails until I am in a space where I should address them instead of stopping recreation time just to, look into an email. Yeah, that's been bugging me though. But honestly, like it's already March, right? It's March 3rd as we record this.
Yeah,
I've watched 10 movies, which is not a lot for 2 months in.
In the entire year.
Yeah,
I'm ahead of James for the year.
probably. I don't know. What does my letterbox say? It's not even up to date because there's probably 3 or 4 that need to go on there. 20 this year.
Okay,
But let's say I stayed on this pace. That would be 120 movies.
Yeah.
And that would be 50 lower than last year, roughly.
all right, Zach, I want you to make a prediction right now. When we do Hangover for 2024, who's going to have watched more total movies in 2024, myself or James?
James by a long shot.
Okay, so you think he'll pick the pace up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not even
don't know.
convinced that both of you will be alive at the end of this year.
What? That is awful to say, Zach.
Why would you? Do you think there's a greater chance we
Where's
won't
some
be
wood? I
alive?
need to knock on some wood. Zach needs to. Jeez, he's wishing death on one of us, Kyle.
I'm
Well,
not
now I know
convinced.
Zach won't be
I'm
alive
not-
at the end of this year.
Not convinced that you will be.
So, like, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
This is one of those
Yeah.
moments where something's going to happen, and then people are going to reference this and be like, "What's
Is this
what's
going to play at
Zach's-"
my trial? You're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Where's it? What do they call that? Your alibi.
Right.
No,
You need
they
an
don't call
alibi
it my
right now.
alibi. My
You remember-
confession?
Saying. Sure.
Your MO. Your motive. Remember in Anatomy of a Fall where they like replay a fight that they had, the wife and the husband had right before the death? That's what they're going to happen. They're going to replay this episode.
Can we just take a moment and think about what a strange thing to say?
What do you mean? You're asking me to
I'm
predict.
not convinced you two are going to make it through the end of the year, or both of you are going to.
You're trying to
make
make
it
me
through the end
predict something that's going to happen in 2025. That sounds like the future to me.
of the year. It is
Like,
but
you don't think there will be anything beyond 2024? Is this it for us, Zach? Like,
No,
not
no,
us,
no.
but like us, the capital U us.
No, I think it's reasonable to assume that we'll continue on as a species.
Okay. Just
but
not me. and
not
James
reasonable to
specifically.
assume that Kyle and I will stay alive through 2024.
It's not remotely what I said.
Well, if I
You
die
said you
in
weren't
20
convinced.
I'm not convinced. Are you convinced?
I'm convinced that we'll be here throughout all of 2024. Yeah.
I'm pretty positive.
Optimistic.
I mean, I
Pretty
don't see any
positive.
reason why that wouldn't be. It doesn't mean it will be, but I'm convinced it's probably true.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Me too. Me too.
Well, Zach, I'm convinced that you'll be around next year. Whether I am or not, apparently, is not an issue. But
But no, I
I
do
hope you
think-
enjoy your 2025, Zach.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do think James will have watched more movies than you.
Okay. If he doesn't keel over first, apparently.
right. If I make it through March.
Right.
If he did, that would certainly boost you in this race.
Yeah,
That's all
that
I'm
would be
saying.
like, it's mine to lose now.
Frankly, if one of you dies, I would think it's most likely the other person trying to win this head.
Oh,
Well,
you
yeah,
think that's the motive?
Well, it seems like a more reasonable motive.
What a
than
thin motive.
Pinning it on me. What would be my motive? No
don't
motive
know.
has been expressed.
You're the one throwing out predictions, all right? We're not on trial here. You
I
are.
was asked to predict by Kyle. So
That's
I'm
predicts my
leaning a little bit
demise.
towards Kyle being the culprit.
Right. Then you volunteered the thought you've had that you're not convinced one of us is going to make it through 2024. We didn't ask
not
you
a
that
motive.
question.
It's not a motive.
True. All right. I don't know how to segue this, so I'm just going to say there's some things we'd like to ask you to do before we get into the meat of this episode, which is a
Do it while you
This-
can, guys. Do it while you can.
discussion on Dune: Part 2. Don't forget, there's a video version of this podcast. Check it out on YouTube and subscribe. Watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. We'd appreciate that. Leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only. We'd also appreciate that. You could send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Send a comment, question, list suggestion, any of those kinds of things. Next episode, we're going to do Oscar chat and answer listener emails. So if you have a burning question or something you'd like heard read aloud on the podcast, send it to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Also, speaking of the Oscars, we have an official Cinerealists Oscar pool. We have a website where we're playing this pool. The website is oscarpicks.app. In order to join the group, just click the link in the description of this podcast in your podcast app of choice or in the description on the YouTube video. Just click it, make a ballot. It'll put you in our group, and you can compete against other listeners and us. I think all 3 of us have our picks in there. I was seeing earlier this evening. So, yeah, join in on the fun. Speaking of the Oscars and joining in on the fun, while the Oscars are airing, we will be in the Cinerealist Discord. Again, link in the description. and we will be chatting it up in there. So if you just want people to quietly hang out with while you watch the Oscars, jump in on the Discord. You guys ready to talk Dune: Part 2?
Very ready.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get to it right after this clip. That was Dune: Part 2. Dune: Part 2 is a 2024 epic science fiction film directed by Denis Villeneuve, who co-wrote the screenplay. The movie stars Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista, Christopher Walken, Léa Seydoux, Javier Bardem, Stellan Skarsgård, Charlotte Rampling, amongst others. What a cast. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Dune: Part 2 is Paul Atreides unites with his Connie? Is that how you say her name? Chani and the Fremen while seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. How do you say that name?
Chani.
Chani. Chani?
That's how I say it throughout the whole movie.
Okay.
You did see the movie, correct, James?
I did. There's a lot of people and a lot of names in that movie. So
And
if you haven't read the book and you're taking it all in, I would say good luck other than the name Paul and Fremen. You know what I mean? The rest of them, and maybe Emperor because it's easy to remember. But most of the names are not normal names, and there's just a ton of people in the movie.
His mom is named Jessica.
Well,
right, but they even stopped calling her
for
that throughout the movie.
I mean,
like she's got a totally different name at some point in the movie.
What I always find fun is that there's like 5 different ways they refer to the Messiah throughout this story. Like each culture has their own name for who's the one, the Messiah.
That didn't help either.
Just willy-nilly will drop them in there as they see fit.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so Dune: Part 2. What'd you guys think of it?
Well, first of all, I want to say that James and I saw this together, which is rare.
We did.
These days. We saw it together.
We saw it in the IMAX laser.
Ooh.
Yeah.
On a faux IMAX screen. I would say it was not the 40-foot best IMAX screen in our area, but it was
looked good
in a IMAX theater in brand new chairs. And the sound in this movie in that theater was amazing.
It really was.
They have the brand new chairs come with butt shakers in the chairs, and so all the like sand rumbling scenes in the movie, it felt like the whole theater was, on a sand shaker. It was great.
Are these the same as
are you saying our
box
seats were shaking?
No, there are bass speakers built into the seat underneath your butt.
Oh, okay. So it's not like the chairs were moving while.
No. It just felt like that.
Okay.
It felt like the whole theater was shaking.
Gotcha.
Literally, the theater wasn't shaking, but.
James, I want to hear what you thought first.
You want to hear what I thought? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me give some context. Dune 1 came out, and it wasn't my favorite movie. I respect it. I thought visually it was interesting. It was way better than the original Dune film adaptation by what's his name?
David Lynch.
By David Lynch, for sure. I mean, the David Lynch one, in my opinion, comically awful, I would say. I mean, it just almost unintelligible, I would say, and just so much story hacked away to the point where what was left in the movie was just confusing and dumb because it didn't feel like any characters had any motivations for doing things because there wasn't enough time to give anybody any motivation to do anything. So I was looking forward to a new version of this with a capable director. Not that David Lynch isn't capable, but he makes a very specific kind of movie, and it's not a Dune movie. So looking forward to a good director taking on this material and making me a fan of it because I don't care about Dune at all. Never read the book. Didn't like the original movie. And I think he got that done. But I didn't walk away with the same feelings that I got from other movies that I've walked away from where I'm like, I have to see that again. I'm going to get obsessed with this. And this is going to be, one of my new things. I just walked away with it like, I like Sicario better. You know what I mean? It's just another movie in his portfolio to me. I think part of the reason why I felt that way is because it's all set up for the most part in the first movie. Like there's a little bit of action at the end that matters, but the rest of it is all politics and learning about these people. And it makes sense that part 2 would be better because it doesn't need that setup anymore. And that is true. Part 2 is better because they didn't have to set up a bunch of stuff. It's kind of kicks off. It has nicely paced action sequences throughout the film. You still get political intrigue, but instead of talking about doing things to this person and that for long stretches of time, they just do it instead of talking about it and leave it to you to kind of figure out the implications over time of what's happening. And so I like that a lot better than a lot of the politics of the first one. I also rewatched the first one this week after watching the second, just to see maybe it'll make the first one better to me. I felt the same thing, that there's just sequences in the first one where I'm just like, this is long and drawn out, and I'm not sure it's necessary for what was important to accomplish in the first movie. Regardless, this movie I thought was super fun to watch, which I would not apply to the first one for me. I think you could probably skip the first one and watch a YouTube video and watch this movie and be a total fan of the series. As long as you get the basic setup of Paul is the Messiah figure and he has these followers who want to worship him, and he's doesn't want to lead them because he doesn't feel like he's the actual leader, and the basics of what this story is. That's enough for you. I think there's probably some pieces of part 2 that I don't fully understand or know the intricacies of every detail of why this person did this or that. And I also don't think it really matters to most people to know all of those things. I'm happy to learn them. But I don't think I got everything that was going on in the second movie, but I was definitely visually blown away by it. And I got chills in certain moments that I think were designed to be emotional. And the acting, pretty much all around, maybe short of Batista's kind of one note rage quitting throughout the movie. Short of that, which I'm sure was just what they had for him to do. They didn't give him much more than that. I thought the acting was pretty spot on, especially Austin Butler. Austin Butler's a guy, I've been watching Masters of the Air on Apple, and he's a lead in that show, kind of a third series in the, Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg World War II miniseries. And I've only seen him do that and Elvis and a couple of other roles where he's just a normal human. And so him in this movie, what's the name of the race? Anarchics or something? What's the name of the bad race?
The Harkonnens.
The Harkonnens. Him as kind of the
race, it's family.
Sure. Him as one of the Harkonnens, and just kind of like a young buck who's out for power, basically. I just really liked kind of how he disappeared in that role. There was no part of this movie where I was like, why is he still doing the Elvis, impression?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was as far away from the Elvis impression as you could possibly get. Yet when I see him in Masters of the Air, sometimes I'm like, he's still doing Elvis. Anyway, overall, I thought it was a fun sci-fi movie that did have shades of deeper things going on for the people who like their sci-fi, a little more hard sci-fi. I thought the visuals were really interesting. And best of all, it was paced to be watchable by anybody. It's a sci-fi action movie. Whereas the first one was a sci-fi drama. So that's my quick thoughts. What'd you guys think? What did Kyle think? I
Yeah.
don't want to hear from Zach yet. He said I
So
was going to die this year.
I don't hear from Zach either. We should just let's letterbox after this, James.
Okay.
I did rewatch Dune Part 1 before seeing Dune Part 2.
Okay.
And I will say I did enjoy Dune Part 1 more the second time around.
Okay.
I think there's some great world building in Dune Part 1. I don't think you could just skip it. Like, you seem to write it off a little bit, like, it's disposable. And I disagree. I think there's a lot to enjoy for that movie. I agree. It is a lot more setup, where Dune Part 2 is a lot more payoff. And I did find that Part 1 still kind of, it feels like half a movie because it is a lot of setup before the payoff. So just want a quick little context right there. So anyway, I was excited for Dune Part 2 because like I have the setup. I'm ready for the payoff. I read the book back in like high school, I believe, but a lot of this I've forgotten. I've seen the David Lynch version of Dune. I've seen the sci-fi adaptation of Dune. But, I was excited to see what is Denis Villeneuve going to do as Dune. And I think he knocked out of the park with this one. This one movie was super fun. Totally agree. Like there were some moments of sci-fi action, to put it bluntly, that I found just be like, I was awestruck by while I was seeing on the screen. I did not get the chance to see it in IMAX, but I did see it on what we have around here called the Ultra Screen, which is just like a really big movie screen and had the rumble. At least the bass was pumped in that place too. I don't know if the seats were rumbling, but the room itself was rumbly. So just as like a cinematic experience, I was really into it. This book is hard to adapt because there is so much mysticism and prophecy, and there's a lot of like
lore.
Yeah, exactly. I thank you. Lore going on to it. Something we could talk about in spoilers is how much Star Wars cribbed and simplified Dune in its own little, which is not a slight on Star Wars, but you can definitely see the seeds of influence there. But I think Denis Villeneuve, for the most part, pulled off giving you all this lore that is around the world of Dune that takes place like 20,000 years in the future, and making it digestible and palatable. Like you said, David Lynch, who, for reasons outside his control, made an unfollowable movie because he was trying to cut and give you what he can and try and make sense of all this. I think Villeneuve pulled it off where I was very much following the story. Even though I was familiar with it, I still felt like I did not have to draw upon too much of my own background knowledge to actually understand what was going on. Definitely some setups for future movies. I kind of wonder if Dune is our next big sci-fi franchise. Like, I'm trying to think, since Harry Potter, have we had another big sci-fi franchise?
He said that if this one does well, he'll get the green light to make Dune Messiah.
I mean, this one did 80 million over the weekend, which for March is not bad.
And he's always hoped it would be a trilogy, is what he said. So like he wants to do 3 and be done, which kind of makes sense, because if he does Dune Messiah, that's a good place to end it before it starts getting really weird.
With like Children of Dune and what comes after that. Yeah. Right, because Dune Messiah still picks up with the Paul Atreides story. Yeah. Sorry, we're getting a little deep here. Apologize. Anyway, so I'm kind of hopeful we get more of this, just because this movie does definitely set up there being like the future story of like where this is going. We'll see about that. With the acting, Chalamet, I've been pretty lukewarm on his whole career. Like, some people are like, oh my God, Chalamet's in this movie, and it doesn't matter the movie. I'm like, oh, that's fine. And this is the first time where I was kind of drawn to him as an actor. Like, when he's giving those big speeches and he's kind of embracing his destiny, I thought he pulled that off pretty well. He definitely could have come across as like a squeaky teenager in those moments. And I thought he rose to the occasion quite well. So yeah, I say overall, this was a pretty successful movie. Okay, Zach, I guess you can share.
All right, fine. I saw the first Dune, and that was my first exposure to Dune, and I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I saw it at home. I didn't see it in a theater.
You didn't read the books back in the day?
No, I didn't.
Have you read them since?
Yes. So
Okay.
I liked the movie enough where I was like very curious about. Oh, and I'd seen the original Dune movie, the Lynch version,
Right.
before that, a long time ago, and was pretty confused by it. So this past year I've read the Dune book, and then I was very excited for this movie. Because you a lot of the details, get beaten into by the book, like, so you definitely know kind of what's going on. Anyways, went to see this movie. I was excited for it. I'd heard really good things, and so I was trying to temper my expectations because people were starting to really lay it on thick for this movie, I would say. Yeah, and if you look at Letterboxd, it's ridiculous. It's just 5-star, 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 like, for pretty much everyone that's rating it in a way that's way more than other movies that people get enthusiastic about. Anyways, I saw
IMDb is
this
the
movie.
same. It has like a 9 on IMDb right now.
Yeah. I saw this movie, and Kyle said it knocked it out of the park. I think it definitely knocked it out of the park. It kind of blew me away. I thought the movie was awesome. So many tricky things are happening, right? So, like, there's the base level things that he has to do. He has to make a blockbuster that people can understand from a book that has so much minutia and, like, detailed history, like, with the Bene Gesserit and the, Quetzalcoatl Haderach and Muad'Dib and all these things that, like, just sound like gibberish. He has to actually get people to care and understand what's going on. And to be successful at that is tough, but I think that he was successful at that, which I thought was really cool. The cast is ridiculous, like, just how many people are in there. And for the most part, it did not feel like stunt casting. Like, it just felt like it heightened everything maybe a little bit. Like, maybe there's a couple instances where it's like, okay, well, I just another famous person. And Christopher Walken maybe stood out to me in a bad way. Like, he wasn't exactly how I pictured the Emperor.
Okay.
But did anyone else think that he was in there because he was in that music video?
Yeah, Weapon of Choice by Fatboy Slim.
Weapon of Choice.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, I don't know if that was the reason for it, but right, that song references Dune. He's dancing on the ceiling and everything. So
yeah.
It's a fun connection.
I think it's a fun connection. But I really like the cast. James, one funny thing about Austin Butler. I had in my mind Austin Butler played Elvis. And so I'm watching him on screen, and it's like, wow, he just really does not look like himself at all. Like, I can't imagine how much makeup they've done to him, because he looks nothing like Jacob Elordi.
Oh, Jacob
so
Elordi.
The whole movie, I'm like, how is this Jacob Elordi? He looks nothing like him.
Wrong Elvis.
Yeah, wrong Elvis.
Sure.
So I thought that was I completely forgot about Austin Butler as Elvis. So I thought that was funny. The music is incredible. It's such an interesting and good score. The sound, obviously in IMAX, took it up a notch, but visually, I mean, sand is so boring. And this is a world where, like, without color, right? There's just no color. There's even whole sequences in black and white, pretty much, which I thought was a cool cinematic touch, because you kind of, like, subtly realize that everything's in black and white. But it didn't feel artificial in the same way that, like, every other movie that had a black and white sequence would feel artificial. It felt like, I guess it's just in this world, everyone's really pale and they only have black things.
Don't they have like a black sun or
Black
something
sun,
that they
yeah,
orbit?
That's what I read somewhere, that all the black and white scenes were on Arrakis, and Arrakis has a black sun, which is why it's.
Well, they weren't on Arrakis.
It's not Arrakis.
Harkonnen's plan is like O3B or something star. It's like got a number name.
Yeah, I can't. They said it in the movie. I can't remember what it was.
99 star or something like that. Anyways, yeah. So visually, he was able to make, a desert planet just really compelling visually, and there was so many elements that were just like, the action was pretty awesome. I loved seeing some of those moments play out with, like, there's certain, like, beats that it's going to hit, right? Like, he's going to do this and he's going to do this. And when he does them, it was well done and awesome, If I had a criticism about the film, it was when we get away from some of the high drama stuff, to just like the interpersonal chatting. Like sometimes characters like Paul and Chani would be chatting outside of a tent or something. And it's kind of like their version of flirting. And then it started to feel more like I was watching like Xena Warrior Princess or something like that, where it's just people are just like, just chatting. Maybe part of that is like Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet just seeming younger or whatever. But
yeah.
But that was few and far between. For the most part, it was kind of high drama. Everyone's serious and talking to each other about important things. And I thought it was great. So I really enjoyed it. And I want to say for a movie that's almost 3 hours, I wasn't bored.
Nope.
And I don't think a lot of people would be bored. And that's impressive.
I noticed that I don't think anybody in our theater got up the entire time. I don't even remember ever seeing anybody go to the bathroom or anything the entire time, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I would say
movie.
This was a pretty still crowd. Where like I've seen other movies and it's been like the climax and people are up using the bathroom. And this one, people were in their seats most of the time.
Yeah, normally for a 3-hour movie, you got to scoot around to let somebody by at least once. Never happened.
Yeah,
for us in that movie.
And thematically, this movie touched on something that I never see discussed in movies, and I thought was so interesting. And that's this idea of like, is he a false Messiah or a real Messiah? Like the faithful certainly think he's the real Messiah. He thinks that he's a false Messiah, but maybe he's wrong about himself or they're wrong about him. Like the movie like dances with this idea of like who's right and what really does it even mean to be the real Messiah versus a false one. It was just so interesting to me to see it discussed.
This is also a movie in a world where people know the Messiah, like where the Messiah story came from. So like, because you know the origin of the story, it's easier to question, is this truth or has this been fed to us?
Yeah. Yeah. It's super interesting.
Yeah.
And for him to like totally know that, like there's no wool over his eyes about like how this all came to be, but yet to have like his abilities and to see the future and to like all of these things, and see things play out, it certainly must make him question what's really going on here, or what's really at play. It's just so fascinating.
Zach, you had two things that sparked ideas in my head here. One was you're talking about some of the casting.
Yeah.
And I thought Florence Pugh felt a bit of stunt casting just because she did so little with the movie. But that could be a like, let's set up the next movie thing that's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have to have her in this movie if they're going to have a third one.
Yeah, but
and so they could,
It's like that could have been a role played. It didn't have to be Florence Pugh playing that small of a role. If it's a third movie, you obviously want a big name for it, but it's not a huge role in this movie.
That's true. So what would you suggest?
I suggest you hire no one for cheap and then recast it in the third. No, I don't know. No,
you would recast?
No, I would not. No, I'm being sarcastic. No, I mean I agree. Like if you're hoping to make a third movie, you want to say this is a major character in my third movie and look at this, huge star that I have for it. But if there wasn't to be a third movie, it seems like a bit of a waste of Florence Pugh.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another cameo in the movie that is you would also probably consider a waste.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I think we could talk about it in spoilers because that's
right.
Yeah, even more so. And then you're also mentioning, Zach, the various conversations they'd have like around tents. And I want to say like by the fourth time that Zendaya and her friend were like talking about Paul and looking at him and wondering if he was the Messiah or not, I was like, we're just having the same conversation over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like against a sandy tented backdrop. So that got a little repetitive.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the repetitiveness at all. I think maybe I'm not going to say you guys are wrong, but for maybe that's in there for people who this is the first time experiencing the story. You know what I mean? And
right.
Since you're not going to get that like 4 different names all mean Messiah, then you need to kind of drill it into your brain that that's what's going on here. And maybe those scenes were for the people who just come with no additional information.
Maybe. I personally think that's the least confusing thing about the story. That he's Messiah.
It's the most important that you understand.
Sure.
Might be the least confusing, but it's also the most important. Like some of the other stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about in spoilers with the women in black and like some of the other things, some of the bloodline stuff that's going on, all that stuff you kind of really don't even need to know even by the end of the movie. You just need to know kind of the base of his followers and the discussion around whether he is the guy or not, basically.
I thought Javier Bardem was awesome. And
Yeah.
his character is great.
Yeah, I heard somebody who's like deeply entrenched in this saying that his role is actually bigger than it is in the books. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, maybe.
I'll defer to Zach on that one. It's been a while.
Yeah, maybe. They certainly barely touched on some subplots, like from the book. Like, well, I won't talk about them now, but yeah, some things from the book that like were major themes, I thought, like are barely in this. But I think it's fine. I think any Dune fan would love this adaptation.
Yeah, I thought like maybe his role in the movie was more to just kind of be a counterbalance to the argument that Chani has, where she's kind of the only one that seems suspicious of the claim, and Javier Bardem's character Stilgar is like just constantly reinterpreting everything that's going on as proof that this is the guy we should follow into battle.
Sure.
Well, and
Kyle,
I think it's interesting to show.
Oh yeah, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't she half Fremen, half human?
I believe so, but they don't really get into that in this movie.
They don't. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to show that like not the Fremen aren't a monoculture, which I think we so often see in these stories of like, oh, and here's these people and they believe this, and in this case, like there are, they all live in the same environments, but they talk about how they have Fremen who are more warriors and they have Fremen who are more the fundamentalists. And I think, you have Shani and Stilgar trying to show those two sides, like that there's different sides to this culture and they don't all have the same beliefs or all follow the same path.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
He does a
Anything
great
else?
job of building a big universe. Like it's a big world, right? It's
right.
Like there's depth anywhere you look, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm. This movie reminded me of Star Wars a lot.
Well, there's a reason for that.
No, I get that.
Okay.
I'm not even talking about in subject matter. I'm talking about in like the presentation and the how much fun it was to watch.
Oh, I can.
And like how much information they gave you to set up kind of the next move that the movie was going to make. It seemed to be telling two stories, one for somebody on first viewing and maybe another for people that know more about it or want to dive deeper into these things. Yeah, and I appreciated that. I had fun watching it, and I expected to like it, but didn't expect to have fun watching it because I wouldn't say I had fun watching the first one. I respect it, but I wouldn't say it's a hoot to watch. Whereas this one was, I mean, you got people riding giant worms in this one for longer than 15 seconds.
Yeah, how cool were some? I mean, we can talk about it in spoilers, but how cool were some of those scenes of the sandworm riding?
Yeah. It was. I think it was worth the wait for sure. Okay. Anything else spoiler free? Go ahead.
Another thing this movie was not shy about was it would just cut time and not even care about like signposting it to you. It would just like 3 months passed and it's just the next scene and no indication that 3 months passed except from context of what they're talking about. And I just liked that it didn't dumb it down for you.
All right, so let's letterbox Dune : Part 2. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. What do you guys say?
I'm sitting at a 4.5 right now. This is a potential 5. I want to watch it again.
I have a hard time understanding less than 5 stars for this. I thought it was so awesome. It's a definite 5-star for me.
Awesome.
There will be a spoiler chat section of this discussion at the end of this episode. If you're listening on a podcast app, if you're listening on YouTube and you'd like to jump to that discussion, just hit the link in the description.
Let's rank some movies.
It's our top 10 best sci-fi movie list. This is a big one, guys. I love sci-fi movies. How about you?
I love sci-fi movies.
I love sci-fi movies.
Didn't realize. Can I ask you very first, starting out?
Sure.
Can we define what is a sci-fi movie? Like, how do you define it?
I had some trouble with this.
I'll tell you how I defined it. I went to Letterboxd and I told it, only show me sci-fi movies I've seen.
No, I
And then
get
it
that.
showed me sci-fi movies I've seen.
So
But
that's
I'm
where
sure
I
it showed you
started.
some movies that you wouldn't personally consider sci-fi, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were some movies that I wouldn't say are sci-fi first, but certainly had sci-fi elements in them. And so I adjusted based on that.
Okay. But apart from just the mechanics of it, how would you define a sci-fi movie? Or is that your definition? Just whatever Letterboxd says, and that's what you go by?
No, I mean, it's obviously a movie that has some scientific element to it that also is based in fiction.
Is that it for you, Kyle? Is that it for you?
No, I would say for me, a sci-fi movie builds a imagined world that could be extrapolated from our current world. It could be happening right now, or it could be happening years in the future. But the idea is like, if this could take place in our world, but let's go outside our bounds of understanding of reality.
That sounds like that would heavily include fantasy, though.
Mm-hmm.
I would, yeah. I mean, you could say that, but I look at all my lists, and none of my lists feel like, I mean, no, because I think fantasy of being in a different world altogether.
Is Peter Pan a sci-fi movie?
No.
Is it a fantasy movie?
Yes.
Is it a different galaxy?
It doesn't have to be. So, I mean, I can say right now, by my definition, technically Star Wars is not a sci-fi movie, but I left it in there because it's obviously a science fiction movie.
Right. It's kind of an impossible task to define sci-fi to the point where you can like be rigid about it.
Right. But I would say the rest of my movies on my list all take place with humans, either on Earth or they've come from Earth at some point.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I think my working definition of sci-fi is the setting or the plot of the movie has to be affected by the implications of technology that doesn't actually exist.
Okay.
So there has to be technology that doesn't exist influencing the setting or the plot. That's why, so like a lot of times post-apocalyptic movies are listed as sci-fi.
Right.
And so, for instance, The Postman, which is a movie I absolutely love, is listed as a sci-fi movie. I didn't include it because I just don't see any sci-fi element to that film. It's post-apocalyptic for sure, but they just used conventional nuclear weapons to create the world that they're in. It didn't seem sci-fi to me.
And you know what, Zach? You just convinced me to make a change to my list on the spot.
You're taking off Postman? I get it.
Yep. The Postman is coming off. It was on there, but thank you for your wisdom. No, I made an instant change, and I will mention that in my
nice.
I'll be making
mentions.
no change because there's not a chance The Postman would be on my top 10 list anyway.
Sorry, Kevin Costner, you're off.
Yeah. So that'll be my working definition of
Waterworld
sci-fi.
on my list than The Postman.
Cool. Well, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All right. Who wants to go first?
I do.
Do it.
My number 10, I think it's going to appear on at least one other list. It's got to be Back to the Future. I think Back to the Future is such a fun movie. It's like easy popcorn sci-fi funness with actual like intelligence and heart in great acting and memorable characters. It defined time travel movies. Yeah. And I think time travel is one of my favorite sci-fi like themes and subplots. Love time travel movies. And yeah, Back to the Future is just so fun. I know, Kyle, you like the second one better. The second one is more creative in how it like has multiple like looks at the same scene, is so cool and well executed. But it also has like the darkness of the Biff world. And I
Yeah,
just
you don't
don't
like-
like that section.
You don't like evil 1984 or 85?
I don't.
No.
But Back to the Future 1 is a lot more wholesome. Where, I mean, there's things I don't like in it as well. Like, I think the dad is so dopey to the point of like not being fun to watch. Like, he's just like cringe-worthy dopey watching him.
Crispin Glover?
Yeah.
Crispin
Do not
Glover?
enjoy that character.
Glover.
He's
Thank you.
so McLovin. He's so dopey. That's just like, it's cringe-worthy to watch. But other than that, love that movie. So Back to the Future, my number 10 personal favorite sci-fi movie of all time.
Nice. I'll say when I first made my list, I just went to my top 100 and I sorted by sci-fi and said, bam, there's my list. And I started looking at this and I was like, I want to move these around. And I started feeling, is this actual sci-fi? So although my list closely may follow my top 100 sci-fi-ish movies, it's not exactly that, which I think is a little bit more interesting. I also took a page from Zach's list of his top 10 favorite movies, started the letter B. So I'm calling this my top 10 favorite sci-fi movies, parentheses, 2001, A Space Odyssey memorial list, because obviously that's my number one. There's no question there. I didn't want to include it on there. So it's my number one if I was to make the actual list, but it has its own memorial space, just like Braveheart does for you.
I'm not challenging Kyle here, but it feels like you can do that for a throwaway list, like favorite B movie, but this is your list of all time
Yeah.
in cement of best sci-fi movies.
I'm
I
with-
think if
I'm with James on
2001
this
is your
one.
number one, it's your number one.
All right,
And you bump something else.
fine.
Just tell us
Well,
what you bumped.
Well, I bumped a movie before, and I guess I'm gonna have to bump right now. The Terminator got bumped off my list to number 11.
Yeah. I mean, these
This is a
big
good
lists,
movie.
I think you put in what is the actual number one.
Oh,
on a
right.
big
Well,
list.
spoiler, everyone. But if you
I mean,
listen
people
to the
can guess
podcast
my number one too. It's
for
not
a
that
while,
hard.
yeah. All right. Well, then my number 10 is Annihilation. This is the Alex Garland film. Zach's rolling his eyes already. I can't wait. I love bringing this movie up because Zach hates this movie.
So dumb.
This is the Alex Garland's loose adaptation of the book of the same name. It's about a team of women, including Natalie Portman, who enter into this.
Guys, I just got a text. You know how sometimes you get those spam texts that are
Okay.
like scammers trying to get you to talk to them?
Right.
Mhm.
I just got one saying, "Excuse me, are you an anesthetician, Gabriella?"
I kind of want you to say yes and see where this goes.
It's such great. Are you an anesthetician, Gabriella? No, wrong number.
Oh, who
Sorry,
are
Kyle,
you?
I apologize. I
Yeah.
apologize.
You just want me to talk about Annihilation.
No, I'd love it.
All right.
Shimmer.
Uh,
Shimmer.
Anyway, it's a story about this team of women, including Natalie Portman, led by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who go into this this zone that nothing has come out of. That is in it's like the swamps of Georgia. It's called the Shimmer, and inside they find that the earth is changing, that nature is changing, and it's a sci-fi movie because there definitely is, weird creatures and there are unexplained things happening and there's possible alien connections going on. But it's also, to me, a deeper story about just change and both the acceptance of change and the fear of change. I really like Annihilation. It really hit with me, and it's probably this movie that Zach and I disagree on the most.
Yeah, maybe.
Really? Of all the movies, that's the one you guys disagree on the most.
I would say it's a strong contender. Yes.
Oh, okay. And that's because you really like it and Zach actively despises it? Is that what we're saying?
Zach
I
thinks it's
actively
the
dislike
stupidest
it.
movie.
You disliked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I disagree with that. I like that movie a lot. It's not going to make my list, but thought it was really good.
What is your number 10, James?
Oh, my number 10 is The Matrix from 1999. Most people know what this movie is. I think probably it makes my list because it's so specifically of the time. And I say that because it kind of defined the time. You know what I mean? Like you point to this movie as like the late 90s movie that felt like the exact movie that should be made as we're going into the year 2000 and like computers getting better and faster, and it's like a vision of the future while also being set in the current time, right? It's like, oh, this is normal reality, but also there's this whole digital world that lives alongside us, and we're actually just in this giant computer, and we're being fed through tubes, and you know, we're being taken advantage of each other of and stuff like that. And I just think this movie influenced sci-fi for better or for worse, depending on your perspective, probably. It innovated visually and was a great combination of inspiration and kind of a moment in time as far as sci-fi goes. And I was the perfect age when this movie came out to absolutely love it. My number 10.
It was my first DVD.
I think it was a lot of people's first DVD.
I don't know if it was
certain
my
age.
first, but probably pretty close.
Yeah.
If not first.
I think Braveheart was my first DVD, Zach.
That was my first VHS 2-pack.
Ooh.
Do you record these somewhere? Why do you remember this?
I just know that.
Hey, you don't remember your first like CD purchase? Those are monumental occasions.
I mean,
I
I could
remember
guess
my first CD purchase.
I could guess like my first 5. I'm not sure I could tell you which of those was the first, but you know, when you don't have a lot of money, you end up with 5 CDs that you listen to like a million times. So those are burned in my brain, but
Or one at first.
Yeah. My number 9 is Blade Runner. I see this movie as so monumental in its set design and its tone, its aesthetic. You know, Harrison, it's like peak Harrison Ford. Just man, he had a good run, and this was part of that. And there's just like weirdness to it. There's like poetry to it and like philosophy. I think really good sci-fi has some philosophy mixed into it. I don't know why that's the case, but I do find that those two things go really, really well together. And yeah, Blade Runner, I think still holds up in a lot of those capacities. So it's my number 9.
I mean, Annihilation's got some great philosophy in it. That's what makes it great sci-fi.
For sure. Yeah. No arguing with that.
My number 9 is Alien. Now, this is definitely a horror movie first. So, right, if you're doing sci-fi movies first, this is not a sci-fi movie first, but it has a strong sci-fi setting. And this movie very much feels like, what if we had Alien, or what if we had a horror movie in a Star Wars-like universe? Because this movie starts with like a ship. And for the first, I don't know, 20 minutes of this movie, it doesn't feel like a horror movie whatsoever. We're very much on a ship. We're establishing what this future looks like, who these people are, what this crew is. Eventually, we go down to a planet and our cool spacesuits, and that's when the horror really kicks off. But for sure, this movie is straight sci-fi, like its first act.
nice. I like that movie as well. My number 9 is 12 Monkeys from 1995, directed by Terry Gilliam. This is a movie that is kind of what Zach described. It's a post-apocalyptic movie, but it also has some technologies in it that aren't necessarily, you know, it's in the future, 2035, and there's some interesting like old school styled technology because they've had to scale back kind of their technology use on some level. Anyway, I just find this movie endlessly interesting. The time travel element combined with the kind of intrigue around what the past has been defined as. Like they have a historical idea of what happened to cause the apocalypse, and so they're going to send this guy back who's a prisoner. He's not really a willing volunteer at first. They're going to send him back to try to infiltrate the group that they thought caused the apocalypse. And so he goes back in time, and it's a Terry Gilliam movie, who is a strange director, I would say. Strange? Yeah. He's an interesting director. Directed a bunch of Monty Python movies back in the day, was a member of Monty Python, and eventually kind of just started making weird genre movies. And I think this is one of his best and one of the best sci-fi movies around. My number 9.
One of my favorite Brad Pitt performances.
It's great.
Movie.
That was back when he like didn't mind being weird on screen. We haven't seen that side of him in quite a while.
Interesting. My number 8 is Flight of the Navigator.
Ooh.
This is from 1986. And Paul Rubens is in it as a voice actor. That's probably the only like name I can drop as far as the movie goes. But I absolutely love this movie. Love this movie. There's a lot of nostalgia, I'm sure, because I saw it as a kid. But it's about a boy who trips and falls on his way home home, and he gets knocked unconscious. And then when he comes to, he goes back home, and everyone is like 10 years older, and 10 years have passed, and he hasn't aged a day. And they try to figure out why, and they take him to NASA, and NASA's like experimenting, like trying to figure out why this is the case. And then he finds a spaceship, and he escapes on the spaceship, and then realizes kind of like what happened or whatever. And so it's kind of like a road movie, him in the spaceship, and the spaceship like talks to him, and he gets to fly it. First of all, it's my favorite spaceship of any film. Like I love this spaceship. I love the design on the inside, the design on the outside. I think it is so much fun. But this movie also like has so much like depth of emotion. Like his parents have like gone through the whole arc of losing him, desperately seeking him, resigning themselves to not having him, and then getting him back. And you see that emotion on screen through the acting. And then he has this arc of like, nothing should be different, but then all of a sudden everything he knows is different, and how scary that is. And it's just a lot of emotional depth in a movie that's in some ways pretty silly, at times, especially with Paul Rubin.
As the voice.
And so I just really like this movie a lot. So Flight of the Navigator, it's probably a movie not a lot of people talk about anymore or see, but I think it's on Disney Plus. I would check it out.
It is. I showed it to Galen several years ago.
Nice. Do you like it?
He did. Yeah. I mean, he really liked Paul Rubens was his favorite part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're working on a new one, right?
Are they?
Yeah.
Gotta get a new voice for the computer.
Bryce Dallas Howard set to direct.
Okay. I like how the steps like float that come out of the spaceship.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Like I remember as a kid watching that movie and like understanding that there were special effects and trying to figure out, well, how they make the steps float.
Oh, there's a video on how they did that.
Well, yeah, there was no YouTube when I was like an 8-year-old.
No,
like,
I get that. I'm just saying, if you still need to know, the answer can be found.
I think I could figure it out, but it was fun as a kid to like watch the movie and try and be like, well, how'd they do that? Because they can't do it that way.
Sure.
My number 8 is the previously mentioned Blade Runner. I agree with you, Zach. This is Harrison Ford at his peak. I think this is also Ridley Scott's masterpiece. This is actually 2 Ridley Scott movies in a row, I realized. Alien and then Blade Runner. Did not plan that. Just the world building in Blade Runner is incredible. It takes place in our future of 2019. So we've already passed Blade Runner. Our world does not look the same, but it gives us flying cars. It's giving us this prevalence of technology. It's giving us the creep of other cultures and societies as they're being ingrained into American culture. And it's giving us a interesting look at a future technology. What is the term for like future technology that's retro looking because it came from a place of our past? Like the idea in this, everything is like tapes and tube screens. There's a term for that. It's like, it's not retro tech, but there's something like that. The idea of like you watch a movie and their future looks like our past because the movie came out even before that.
Um,
I don't know what
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be.
Let's just call it steampunk.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, but I don't think that's what you're saying.
It's steampunk is not the term for it, but
Right.
yeah, I kind of like the idea of like their future is still based in tapes and cathode ray tube.
It's a similar vibe to
TVs.
12 Monkeys. In the future, there
Yeah,
lots of TVs and
Like
bubble
pumps
TVs
and things. Yeah.
pumps and
Diesel punk.
No, I don't think it's a punk term, but I'll figure out what it is. James,
Okay.
have you seen La Jetty, the French short film that influenced 12 Monkeys?
no.
You should check that out.
You should check
It's
it
good.
out. I can't imagine watching La Jetty without having the context of 12 Monkeys because I think it makes more sense if you know that this is the 12 Monkeys influence.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it a series of still images? In black and white?
It's mostly still images. It's like the time traveling guy is kind of shown in close up movement, I think, and he's
Mhm.
kind of remembering things he saw.
It's worth watching.
It's kind of the ending of 12 Monkeys. Like 12 Monkeys took La Jetty, made it their ending, and then expanded
Yeah.
the entire movie from that.
Kyle, is the term you're trying to think of retrofuturism?
Yeah, but that sounds so boring. I thought it was like tape future. It has something to do with like cassettes, but maybe it's just retrofuturism. Okay, I don't know. If I think of it, or you guys find it great. If not, I want to hear what James's number 8 is.
Well, you're in luck because my number 8 is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I'd say is a drama before it's a sci-fi movie, but there's definitely a strong sci-fi hook to the proceedings of the drama, romance drama, I would say. If you haven't seen it, it's a movie directed by Michel Gondry, stars Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, amongst others. It's an interesting love story about people who are so in pain, I would say, like relationship pain, that they're willing to erase the memory of the other person from their mind, and all the implications of what that might be, and whether love could actually conquer the erasing of somebody's mind, like if it would just leave that tiny nugget in the back of the brain, and what kind of issues those might present. And so I certainly like it because I think the romance is genuine and the performance of the two actors, the writing of the movie is solid, but also I think the sci-fi premise just kind of gives motivation to all of that in an intriguing way. And it wouldn't have been the same movie if like Jim Carrey knocked his head on a stone and forgot about his love. You know what I mean? That would make it not a sci-fi movie. I think the sci-fi element definitely adds to the proceedings and puts it over the top for me. My number 7, Eternal Sunshine.
It might be your number 8, but it's my number 7. Eternal
Nice.
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Love it.
Sweet.
I think that's the movie that both you guys have in your top 100, which for me sits somewhere in like my low 400s or something like that.
Okay.
Sure.
I like that movie. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars, but I just don't have this. I don't have the same connection that other people do to have it. So I appreciate it for what it is. I think it's the best. It's one of the best. That's what it's trying to be.
I love that for you, Kyle.
Thank you. My number 7 is my number 3 favorite movie of all time. This is Children of Men. This is a 2006 Alfonso Cuarón movie. It is definitely a dystopian future movie first, so I'll give it that. In this, the human population, the human race has just stopped having babies. It's been almost 20 years since the last baby was born. And Clive Owen is tasked with taking this pregnant woman to safety. And he is unwilling, he's a reluctant hero in this movie. I'm doing a terrible job of setting it up because you guys have seen this and we all know the plot of it. What's great about this movie is Alfonso Cuarón as a director, and then his cinematographer, who I think is Emmanuel Luzbeski, if I get the name correct, who he uses often. You know, there's obviously some very memorable scenes, a couple oneers that are great, set to great music. Julianne Moore really shines in this movie, Zach. She's really standing out. But as a sci-fi movie, this movie takes place in 2027, so 3 years from now. 20 years before or after the movie was made, and it just gives you glimpses of like what maybe our future could look like. So in this case, all the cars are electric. You know, you see a kid who has like a little, it kind of looks like an Apple Watch that he's sort of playing a game with at the table. There's this prevalence of advertising and screens everywhere that we saw in Blade Runner. So it's kind of, I like movies that are sort of near future, and they say, well, what if we take our technology 20 steps forward or 20 years forward? What would that look like? And I think Children of Men does a great job of trying to predict what our near future would look like in a science fiction setting. So we're not getting anything crazy like spaceships or laser pistols, but we're still getting, you know, maybe what the next step is for man in the wrong direction.
Cool. James?
Oh, sorry. My bad. My number 7 is Alien from 1979. The original Ridley Scott Alien. This was already on your list, right, Kyle?
Yep.
Probably one of the first rated R movies I saw at a sleepover. And I remember being scared to watch it because like it was one of those movies my parents didn't want me to see. And then, you know, I was free from their clutches for one evening, and a friend convinced his mom to rent it at the rental store. And then we watched it, and I was like, yeah, this is the movie. This is what I like. And it's not even, I mean, it's definitely a rated R movie, but it's the right kind of horror, I would say. Horror sci-fi. It's so thick with tone and world building. You know what I mean? That's not the shiny spaceship inside. Nothing against Flight of the Navigator, but it's a very grungy but technologically advanced interpretation. And the idea that like this organic unknown enters that world and just kind of they don't have the capabilities to deal with it. It just I think it hits on many different levels and pulls off all the genres it's trying to pull from. Its best case scenario for, you know, having a multi-genre movie, including the sci-fi element. My number 7.
Nice. My number 6 is Primer. It's a time travel movie, very independent. It's probably the lowest budget movie on any of our lists. And one of the most low budget movies I've ever seen, honestly, like of a major distributed movie. But Primer's so heady, like it's way more heady than like a Christopher Nolan time kind of thing, like in Tenet or, you know, one of his movies that messes around with time. It to the point where like it's almost incomprehensible towards the end about what's actually happening, although everything has been charted out and like, you know, makes sense once you like study it, I guess. But it's just so good at playing out a time loop movie and the consequences of that and where that goes. It's just I'm fascinated by that movie endlessly. And of my list, this is the one that I most would be excited to rewatch like tonight if I could, you know?
Yeah.
Like looking at it. So Primer, my number 6.
Have you seen the Excel spreadsheet that explains this, like what's happening in this movie? All
I've
the
seen like
different
a
timelines.
chart. I don't think I've seen a spreadsheet, but I've seen a chart.
Okay. It might be one became for the other, but yeah, it's like 100 rows long, and pretty crazy.
Yeah.
My number 6, also previously mentioned, we're probably going to start getting into a lot of these, The Matrix. And James, I think you hit it right on the head. Like, it's a perfect movie for 1999, pre-year 2000, pre-Y2K fear, just like fear of what can technology do to us. And this movie does a great job of also using its sci-fi conceit to give you awesome action. So you get really cool sci-fi world building about what we think is happening versus what's really happening. And then they also use that sci-fi wrapper to be like, well, let's do some cool kicks and bullet dodging while we're at it. So it's a great mashup of the two genres.
Agreed. My number 6 is Moon from 2009. Certainly not as low budget as Primer, but Moon has a budget of $5 million, which is not much when it comes to sci-fi movies. That's for sure. It's certainly a low budget sci-fi movie. It's also one that feels maybe the most grounded in our reality today. I mean, it's a movie that's in the future, set in the future, but it feels like a future that could exist. The idea of us needing the moon for some kind of resource and setting up a system where we don't have to constantly keep going to the moon to run that facility. And I just think it's a really great central conceit, powered by a really great central performance by what's his name? I'm drawing a blank.
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell. Unfortunately, it also has the voice of
Kevin
whatever his
Spacey.
name is, Kevin Spacey, which taints it a little bit. But if you try to ignore that, which I constantly do, I still think it's a great movie and kind of a gem. I'm going to say a gem. My number 6, Moon.
Nice.
If there's any movie that was easy to erase Kevin Spacey from, it's Moon, because it's just his voice.
I'm sure people would do it if other people would pay for it at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You just
I
hire a
just
new
think
voice actor.
I think they just assume that if the movie's out, you leave it alone. But other movies that hadn't come out yet, they removed him from.
Well, yeah, they did that with what was that Ridley Scott movie? And they recast him with like Christopher Plummer or something.
All
like
the
that.
money in the world.
All the money in the world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They should just have Christopher Plummer, he passed away recently, didn't he?
I believe he did, yes.
Okay. Well, they should have had Christopher Plummer re-record the lines of Kevin Spacey and Moon.
Yeah. Ready for my number 5?
Oh, yeah.
The Matrix.
I am now. Yes.
The Matrix.
The Matrix. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a bingo.
Super influential film and pretty awesome movie. And yeah, I love it.
Nice. My number 5, I think, will be on one other person's list, and I know will not be on the other person's list, and that is Contact. This is a Robert Zemeckis film starring Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster is a researcher who picks up a unknown signal from space, and she is trying to figure out what is the origin of this signal and what is it saying. But this movie is so much deeper than that, because you have this whole Matthew McConaughey character who plays I don't think he plays a preacher, a minister. He plays a religious man of some sort.
Yeah.
And a lot of this movie is him and Jodie Foster kind of discussing the nature of science versus faith, and how do you rectify the two? Can you believe in both, and can both be true at the same time? Which, even as like an 11-year-old, I found is so interesting. You think like a kid would not find that interesting, but I found that to be a super interesting part of this movie. And then the movie gives you that's a sci-fi payoff towards the end too. So it's not just a philosophical movie. There is this investigation into what is this signal, and then we do go somewhere with that. And I think a poet could have said it better.
They should have sent a poet.
They should have sent a poet. I try and use that phrase way too often in my everyday interactions with people.
That's great.
Yeah. My number 5.
Nice. My number 5 is Kyle's number 1. It's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
You don't know that? You don't know that?
It is on your wall.
And
Crap.
this is great. I feel like I did I mention this in spoilers? Yeah, I love this movie. It's slow and thick and visually full, perfectly conceived. It's one of those movies that if somebody says they don't like it, I'd be like, I get it. You know, it's not for everybody, but I like it. Even the things that people criticize about it, I like about it. Even if people were like, it's pretentious, I'd be like, that's what I like about it. The guy who made it clearly knew and made exactly what he wanted to make. And he didn't really care what people thought about it, I don't think, in the end. And it just so happens that it's just perfectly constructed for a specific taste, or maybe a specific exposure at a certain time in somebody's life. Who knows? Confluence of those things. For one reason or another, it feels perfect for me. And so that's why it's my number 5.
Nice. Well, my number 4 has already been mentioned, but that's because it's awesome. Children of Men. Such a great premise, super well executed, has my favorite oneers of any film. And those are amazingly executed. And yeah, I just really, really like that story. So Children of Men, one of the rare instances where the movie is better than the book.
Haven't read the book.
It's not good. It's not great.
Okay. For my number 4, I took a page out of the Zach playlist, and my number 4 is the Back to the Future series. Because I did not want to include at least 2 Back to the Future movies on my top 10 list, because that would have just pushed out other movies. So my placeholder is Back to the Future 2, because that is my favorite of all the Back to the Future movies. But I like the Back to the Future world in general. I love the idea of the time machine. I love the silly explanation for the time machine that runs on garbage in the first movie. No, sorry, runs on plutonium in the first movie and then garbage in the second movie. But what I really love about the Back to the Future movies is just how much fun they have with time travel. And these are fun time travel movies. And even though the stakes are high of like, we can't change the future, we could erase our future, we could erase ourselves, the movie's enjoying that. And like, yeah, he's being erased, but it's during like a 1950s sock hop that's like under the water themed. And these movies are so much fun. Even the third one, it has its flaws. I still enjoy it. And I am happy to put Back to the Future series high on this list.
Nice. My number 4 is the aforementioned Blade Runner.
That's a bingo.
Which I think we've all had on our lists at this point. And I don't have much to add other than when I was a kid, I used to feel like this was like grown up Star Wars for some reason. Like Star Wars felt like it was made for me. And then Blade Runner was like, for adults. And so when I remember watching it as a younger person, like, I don't know, 9, 10 years old, and just being intrigued by it visually, but not fully, thought it was boring at times. And then when I revisited it as a teenager and into my early 20s, I grew to like really appreciate what was going on here. And it's a classic for a reason. My number 4.
Nice. Well, my number 3 is Gattaca. This is a movie that has only become more prescient with time, as it's all about like genetic engineering and stuff like that. And it's just it's a much more like maybe meditative film than a lot of these others. There's not as much action in it, but there's still like a mystery plot. It's kind of a film noir. Like it's not cassette punk like Kyle was talking about. It's some sort of retro, steampunk
Futurism.
kind of future. Yeah. But I love it. I love this movie. Kyle will have to explain why. I don't know, but it's just so good. So Gattaca's my number 3.
I'm sorry, Zach. I'm just too stupid to put this on my list. Oh, they're letters of DNA strands.
Yeah.
Okay.
G, A, T, and C.
Oh, I
DNA.
got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do it again. And my number 3 is the original Star Wars trilogy. And I don't think I really need to go into why this is great sci-fi and why I love these 3 movies so much, especially Return of the Jedi. I love the most of the 3 of them, but all 3 are great. All 3 are 5-star movies. And I don't think Star Wars would have been taken or it's not Star Wars. I don't think sci-fi would have been taken as a serious genre or have been a while if Star Wars had not come around first. Because there was some not great sci-fi before Star Wars and some not great sci-fi after Star Wars too.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. My number 3 is the previously mentioned Children of Men.
That's a bingo.
Totally agree with you guys on everything you said and don't have anything to add. Children of Men.
Very cool. My number 2 is Jurassic Park. I'm obsessed with this movie. I think it's so fantastic. I love Jurassic Park. I don't know what I have to say about the movie, but I think it's great and it's definitely sci-fi.
The term we were looking for is cassette futurism. That's the official term.
Okay.
And my number 2 is also Jurassic Park. And it's also great. It takes a sci-fi concept. It gives super fun action and was it's fun seeing kid accessible scary movies. I think this is definitely a kid accessible scary movie.
My number 2 is Back to the Future, which I think we all mentioned, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a bingo.
Yeah. Perfect mixture of time travel, sci-fi, weird technology, and the DeLorean alterations. Yeah. Charming movie. On top of all of that, my number 2.
Nice.
My number 1 has been mentioned by Kyle. It is Contact.
All right.
Yeah. And it was hard to decide what the number 1 would be, but I think it does have to be Contact because this movie really just has everything for me. Like, it's a solid plot with like tension. Like there's this moment where a mishap happens and they think they're all like back at square one, and then they find out new information, and it's just like the music is soaring in that moment. It's like so much tension and resolution. It's like awesome. The acting is across the board incredible, and all the characters have like nuance to them. Like this Jodie Foster character plays this like very dedicated scientist who believes in like science. But she also like, we know her backstory and her relationship with her father as a kid. And she also has this like on again, off again romance with a guy who thinks very differently, but also like she has an affection for. And she has a rival who's like always vying for like power over her instead of her and stuff like that. There's just like all of these like different relationships with different things going on, and it's just so good. And then there's also a heavy science element of like the signal that they get, and then building a machine, and then all of that, and then it ends on such a like a great conspiracy note, and like it's just I'd love this movie. It's really, really good.
Zach, you got me more excited to watch this movie again.
Yeah. And
I know I need to rewatch Contact clearly because
It's
I've
great.
only seen it the once in theaters.
Sure. I don't
So
know if
Do
you
you guys
how
remember
long
how
ago
it
was that?
starts?
with pulling away from the earth.
Yeah.
I remember
yes.
hearing
that,
the radio
yeah.
signals. And
Yep,
stuff
and all
like
the
that.
signals. Yep.
And it has one of the best trick shots of any movie with
The
her
mirror
running to
shot?
The mirror. Yeah.
Yes. I love the sound the signal makes. Like just the pulsation and
Mhm.
like the different layers that are all built into
Yeah.
that.
What year
it's
was
great.
Contact?
94?
Yeah, so I haven't seen that movie for 30 years.
97. My apologies.
97.
97.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 27 years I haven't seen
Yeah.
that movie.
And it's Robert Zemeckis who can put together a story.
For sure. No, it's a solid movie.
I think the first time I saw it, it was just the ending is pretty ephemeral, emotion based. I don't know. I don't even clearly remember the ending, but I feel like those are my thoughts on the ending. It doesn't it kind of end ambiguously?
No, I think the movie presents a clear ending
for sure.
A clear
But then
explanation.
you're right.
clear
But
ending.
then there's talks of what really happens.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What's portrayed to the rest of the world is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah. What I remember most about that movie, I'm pretty sure is clouded by doing a podcast with Zach for 10 years at this point. Like the constant discussion of Contact is, my relationship with Contact at this point, not the
Oh, yeah.
original viewing of it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So
Next time all three of us are in a room together, we should watch Contact.
That'd be fun.
That'd be fun.
Also, a really good book.
Really good what?
Book.
Is it Carl Sagan who wrote that book?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. My number one, no mystery here. 2001 : The Space Odyssey. Not only my favorite sci-fi movie of all time, my favorite movie, period, of all time. Love this movie. I love everything that it's giving to you. It doesn't try and explain itself. It's really open to interpretation, but it is a visual feast to look at. And every time I watch this movie, I just get giddy. I'm so happy to watch this movie every single time. I can't wait. My son keeps
Nice.
asking me if he can watch it. And although I think it's like appropriate for his age, I don't want it to be like too much for him and then he gets turned off by it. So I'm really trying to gauge like, when are you ready for like a 2.5 hour, it's not even 2.5, like 220 movie that's not really telling you what's going on. Cause we'll watch like Indiana Jones and he'll be like, who's that guy? What's going on? Who's that guy? And also I'm Billy, like, you can't ask questions. You just got to sit there and absorb.
yeah. You don't want him to think your favorite movie is extremely boring. That's your problem, right?
Right. Like I know he may not love it as much as I do, but I also want to be like, what is my dad into?
Yeah, I
So-
mean, get ready. He absolutely
Yeah.
will not love it as much as you do, and you'll be okay with it.
But I mean,
eventually.
Remember, he's half Megan.
yeah, that's right. And she does not, I think she loves me for loving that movie, but doesn't care for that movie herself. I was not that much older than him when I first saw it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we gotta play it out here.
Sure.
James, what's your number one?
Much like Kyle, my number one movie is not only my favorite sci-fi movie, but my favorite movie of all time. It's The Empire Strikes Back, the second of the original trilogy of Star Wars movies. And most people have heard me say this, but it's because it's the Star Wars movie of the original trilogy where everything happens. There's the
It's the
amping
Dune
up.
2 of Star
It's
Wars
the
movies.
Dune 2 of Star Wars movies for sure. Yeah, I mean, you got the ramping up of kind of the father and son reflecting the good versus evil, and all the side characters are having major, story changing things happen to them. And it's setting up like a final push to the end of the story, but also doing it in a way that it feels whole, even though it left things open at the end of it. And I've seen it more times than probably any other movie ever. I love it.
Nice.
And also don't need to ever see it again.
But you're excited to
Don't
watch it
understand
every time
that.
you do, though, right?
Absolutely. It just
Right.
probably wasn't my idea. But when other people want to watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, let's watch.
Sure. Not saying no to
100%.
that.
Yeah. If I have some
Before we
reason
get to spoiler chat, can I briefly go down a list with you guys?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I also have honorable mentions I want to mention too.
Okay, cool. Do you want to do that first or?
Yeah, I'll do mine first. Then I want to hear your list. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So these are ones that are within my top 100, but just didn't quite make the list. The Prestige, great movie. A Clockwork Orange is labeled as sci-fi because it technically takes place like in the future, but it doesn't really feel like a futuristic movie, and that there's not really like a huge leap in technology. So I don't really always see it as a sci-fi movie, even though technically it is. E.T., love this movie, but it's way much more of a drama than a sci-fi. It's got the alien elements to it. The Iron Giant, another great movie. Mad Max Fury Road. This is the movie that I cut from my list just before we started. And then I cut another one because of 2001 Space Odyssey. Even though Mad Max Fury Road takes place in the future, it's very much a dystopia. And it's very much a step backwards in technology. So this didn't quite feel like a sci-fi style movie compared to other things on the list. Close Encounters of the Third Kind would have been my third Spielberg movie. Sorry, fourth with E.T. also on this list. I really like Close Encounters. And then The Terminator, which got bumped because I had to put on my number one movie of all time. So The Terminator was my number 10 until I had to unmemorialize 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay, well, in preparation for this show, I actually made 3 lists. I made my personal top 10 favorite sci-fi movies. Okay, but I that's what we went over. I also wanted to see what are the most popular 10. Right, so I went on Letterboxd and sorted by highest rating. So these are the 10 highest rated sci-fi movies on Letterboxd. Okay, I'll just quickly say them. Number 10, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Ooh, that's
Number
low.
9, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now these are of all movies. These are the top 10 on Letterboxd. Number 8 is Interstellar. Number 7 is La Jetée, which is the movie you referenced before, Kyle. Number 6 is The Thing. Number 5 is Empire Strikes Back. Number 4, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Number 3 is Stalker. Number 2 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And the highest rated sci-fi film on Letterboxd is Dune Part 2.
So The Matrix doesn't even make the top 10.
Doesn't make the top 10.
Does Letterboxd call all superhero movies sci-fi?
I bet they call most of them sci-fi. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they are sci-fi.
I mean, I feel like superheroes become its own genre, but I think they are technically science fiction of like, what if you had this flying suit or.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other list I made was, so I made my personal 10 favorite list, but I can separate out my own personal interests. And I made what I think is the top 10 greatest sci-fi movies of all time.
Okay.
So this is if I were to personally hire a bunch of experts to come up with this list, these are the movies I assume that they would come up with. Okay.
Okay.
So my number 10, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think will become a new modern classic as a sci-fi movie. Number 9, Terminator 2 for kind of like an action sci-fi. Number 8, Back to the Future, the original, I think for like a comedic sci-fi time travel movie. Number 7, Children of Men. I think we all agree on that movie. Number 6, Jurassic Park. Number 5, Metropolis. Really kind of started the genre and is an incredible movie. Number 4, Stalker. I think it didn't appear on any of our lists, but I think all of us like that movie a lot and appreciate it. Number 3, Alien. It absolutely deserves to be on this list, even if it wasn't on my personal list. And I know it was on both of yours. Number 2, Empire Strikes Back. And I think the number 1 greatest sci-fi movie of all time would have to be 2001: Space Odyssey.
It has to be. Yeah. I don't know if anything will ever supplant 2001: A Space Odyssey just because of how influential it was on the genre itself. Like maybe Empire Strikes Back could supplant that as a number 1. But I don't think any new movie would ever get that high.
It'd be tough.
I agree it's not likely, but man, I hope so.
You hope
I hope we're not. I hope we didn't hit the peak when 2001 came out.
Well, right now, in the hearts of many, it's Dune Part 2.
Okay.
Right.
These are the same people that put Interstellar over 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I don't know how much I trust that crowd.
Okay, you guys want to hear other ones in my top 100, kind of like Kyle did?
Yeah, please.
I had The Iron Giant, The Thing, Minority Report. I like that movie. District 9.
Oh, yeah.
Blindness, the original Star Wars, T2, Fury Road, Predator.
Oh, yeah.
It's an alien invasion movie, technically. The sci-fi classic Tron Legacy and Inception.
Nice.
Cool.
Some similar ones in there. What's your favorite sci-fi movie? Did it make one of our lists? Listeners, I'm asking you. If you think we were wrong or think we should see your list, please send it to us to heyguys@cinereelists.com. You could send that or a comment, a question, a list suggestion, any of those kinds of things. Next week on the podcast, we'll be talking Oscars and going over listener emails. So if you send us a listener email this week, there's a good chance we'll talk about it live on the podcast on the next episode. Just saying. Also, find us on YouTube, subscribe there. Find us on Patreon, support the podcast, get extra after show audio, leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that. 5 stars only. Other than that, things that you should definitely do right now, if not right now, then this week, is check the link in the description for the link to our OscarPicks.app group, where you can make your Oscar picks and compete against the rest of us. It's really cool. As the Oscars are playing, it'll literally like tally it for you and compare you against everybody else. There's like a tiered point system based on how hard it is to guess the category. It's a great website and it's fun to do. And so jump in on it.
Are we doing
Also,
a prize this year?
I think we did a mug the
We did a
first
mug
year.
last
Maybe
time,
we
yeah.
redo that this year.
Okay.
Whoever the winner is, as far as the listenerships go, the listenership goes, whoever the winner is, we will send free of charge, free shipping and everything, a Cinereelist mug. So if you need some inspiration to join in on the fun, maybe that'll do it. Also, during the Oscars, if you want to jump in on the Discord, the link is in the description. Check that out. We'll see you guys there. Beyond that, you can follow the podcast on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter, Letterboxd, or Sky Blue account at YoJRB.
Isn't it called Blue Sky?
Blue Sky, Sky Blue, Blue Sky, whatever. It's it's an awful name for a social media.
My Twitter Letterboxd, it is Chauvin.
I'm on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
We'll be back next week. We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it Cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.